You are tampering with forces you can't understand. We have major corporations sponsoring this event.
You are tuned in to the Fantasy Wire HQ QuickCast. Today's show is brought to you by Full Time Fantasy, home of the Fantasy Football World Championships. We're also a proud member of the Full Time Fantasy Network. Check them out online at fulltimefantasy.com. Yeah! I am jacked for this show today. I've been geeked up waiting to record this episode. Oh my God, at least this past complete week for sure. So thanks for jumping on. I'm your host, Frank B. Find me on Twitter at FantasyWireHQ. Bookmark the website, FantasyWireHQ.com. Appreciate you listening as always. Be sure to follow on Twitter, subscribe to the podcast, all that good stuff. So we just wrapped up the Scott Fish Bowl draft. It was an extremely fun draft. Oh my God, I was fortunate to have an awesome group of guys to have drafted with in the skateboard division, which I love. Last season, I was in the Bones Jackson Sega game division, which was pretty kick-ass. But to have the skateboard division, man, speaks to my heart. I grew up on the wheels, grew up on the BMX, the freestyle, doing all that stuff, X Games before the X Games. So skateboard division kicks ass. Huge shout out to at Nate Cheat, at Eric Belair, at Nick Romero FF, at AJ Ardinger 41, at Alex Gelhar on Wisconsin, my friend, at Davis Maddock, at FF_Monsters, at Mike Jernigan 79, at Justin Howe FBG, and at Fugazi Life FB. All those guys are in the division. I just wanted to give them a shout out because class acts all the way around. Everybody was into the draft. Everybody had their angle, their roster build, their plan in mind. It was really, really a solid draft. I looked around some of the chats and DMs and whatnot, and I saw a lot of people either like throwing monkey wrenches into the fishbowl drafts on purpose. Some people not giving a shit about it, letting the clock run, all that stuff. I mean, things happen. I get it, but I was fortunate to be in a solid group. We were pretty on time and on task with getting the picks in on time and not leaving anybody waiting too long. We all have lives. We all understand that, but everybody did a damn good job, so hats off to you. Give those guys a follow on Twitter. Interact with them this season. You won't be disappointed. So, but first, if you've missed the 3-episode series, here's the recap. I broke it down into 3 main core strategy episodes. It was the War Room, all access, behind the scenes for what I do with the draft and just talking fantasy draft, league stuff, strategy, all that good stuff. I had 4 bullet points for each episode. I discussed some strategy to take into your fantasy drafts this season. And the whole podcast too, I mean, I set it up to take you behind the scenes of what I do and follow along with me for one of my leagues for throughout the entire season, start to finish. So why not do it for one of the biggest leagues in the industry, right? If you're in the fishbowl, good luck to you. If not, hopefully you're in a satellite league. You can get in. It's not the end of the world. You can definitely get in. I waited a couple seasons. It was well worth it. It's a fun league. It's about the charity, the donations, the organization supporting them. That's what it's all about. The football is secondary. So hopefully take a little something from this podcast series. Use it for when you get in the league. If you want to use it for your home league, just different stuff like that. I'm like a sponge, man. I want to absorb every kind of draft strategy I can. Whether I use it or not, I want to get all that in my head, make sense of it, do what I want with it, and try something out. So hopefully it works the same for you, and just apply it to that league that you've got to win this season. So on previous episodes, we discussed the plan. The plan, what are you going to do to get ready for your draft? The prep, what are you going to prep? What are you going to put in place to execute the draft? And then finally, the execution, right? So go back, give it a listen if you haven't already. And here's how the show is going to lay out today. I'm going to outline my goals from the draft, and I'll kind of go backwards. I'll Quentin Tarantino this shit from the beginning, and just kind of how I prepped, how I built the wire big board, some short analysis on each player picked. I'm not going to beat a player to death for a 20-minute breakdown. This is the QuickCast. Try to keep it under 30 minutes. If I go a little over, I apologize. It's a lot to get to in this one. But just, I'll give you some short takes on the players, what I think, what I was thinking at the time, and the scenario, what was going on when they were drafted. And then I'll just detail what worked for me and what did not throughout this draft. So let's get to the business.
Access granted.
So what a crazy draft. Looking around at all the different teams on the Scott Fishbowl app that's out there, man, there's so many different strategies and like team builds. It's absolute insanity. I've looked at ones where it was like 5 straight running backs, boom, then a quarterback. Then I had ones the opposite, wide receiver heavy. I've seen ones with like 2 tight ends that were complete meh. This is a tight end premium league, right? Lots of different stuff. So that's why, like I said at the top, I was fortunate to be in the group I was in because everybody was real calculated. Everybody knew who they wanted, I think, for the most part. And it was a great draft. Just, it's crazy. But I'm really pleased with how it turned out. So let's jump into my game plan and my prep. So what I did here, I was off work the whole week. I was on vacation in Baltimore. So the draft couldn't have come at a better time. I had all day to dedicate to it. I had about 3 days prior to just sit down, set my board, get everything in line, and do what I want to do, get ready, prep for Monday, and just nail it. So every day I had plenty of time. I was doing some things on the side, but it worked out really good. The end of the draft, the back end, I was on my way home from Baltimore to Wisconsin, and I was in the vehicle doing the draft on the fly when I wasn't driving, of course. So I was taking notes along the way. I've got some notes on paper, handwritten, chicken scratch. I've got some notes on the computer and the notepad, of course. So let's start with my draft goal. The draft goal, the weekend prior, I basically said, all right, what do you want to do in this draft? I wanted to come away with a solid team that I feel good about. No looking at the team after the fact and going, meh. No regrettable picks, you know what I mean? All that stuff, buyer's remorse. Just keep it simple and let the draft fall to me. And the biggest thing I had in mind was like thinking of how the Ravens do it in real life, the draft. Every year, the Ravens seem to draft a solid group, right? And prior to every draft, analysts and the networks, they go in and say, oh, the Ravens got to do this here. If they don't do this, they're ruined. And then every year, like clockwork, the board falls to them in whatever way they maneuver it, and they land great players and great value at every pick, damn near, this year especially. So I wanted to kind of like mimic what they did, right? I want to be the GM. So how am I going to do this? So I wanted to look at the scoring settings for Scott Fishbowl because this year it's off the hook. It's crazy. My goal was to land the top ranked players and then land solid scoring specific players that are unique to those Scott Fishbowl categories. So I also had targeted players, but I also wanted to land them. They were very important that I get targeted guys that I want. And when I look at a player and I'm targeting him, I'm looking at a real life NFL scenario, not fantasy dreams. And you got to separate them because people get blindsided and pigeonholed into, well, for fantasy, this sets up, this guy will do this, he'll explode or he'll bust. That may not be the real life scenario for this guy. This guy may be fighting for a roster spot, and while you love the idea of him blowing up in fantasy, in real life, he's a long shot to make the team, or maybe he's only a fourth wide receiver that's going to be on the field for a certain amount of plays and packages, and that's it. So you may have your fantasy dreams, but the real life scenario may or may not play out like that. So my goal was look at the real life NFL scenario, not fantasy, not a fantasy angle at all, if I could, but keep it to a minimum. And then finally, land consistent players. Shout out to Bob Lung. That was a big goal of mine, and just kind of walk away from the draft with balance and depth and just have a well-rounded team. So the next spot, my plan of attack, I said, what do you want to focus on? What's the plan of attack? What are you out to do here? I really decided to focus on roster construction. And when I say that, I did not want to go heavy in one position, and then have weak depth at another. I was really looking to have good, solid depth for the bye weeks, and then just land, like I said in the first spot, to positive scoring players. I want those guys that are getting the first downs, all the different unique settings. And those, again, on Scott Fishbowl, they were points awarded for first down catches. Quarterbacks had negative points for interceptions and incompletions. Pick sixes were negative scored, stuff like that. So I wanted to build it unique to those settings. And then I planned the whole draft approach pretty much in 3 ways. I cut it up and I said there's three main things I've got to hit in the draft, and that's the best player available on the board, go for the balance. I want a balanced team, and the position start, meaning what positions am I going to kick this draft off with? Because when you look at the settings and you look at the layout, you've got a lot of priority in quarterbacks. Obviously, it's a super flex. You've got some tight end premium, which some people say it means nothing because it's a wash with a point, whatever. But I do take it into account because the tight end position group as a whole really sucks. So those were my 2 kind of main positions, but just kind of make up my mind. How do I want to start this draft 1, 2, and 3? And I'm going to get to that in a second. But the next spot is the big board construction, the Fantasy Wire HQ big board. I loved making this. This was so much fun. I probably had more fun doing this shit than the draft itself. But what I did is I went and got that SFBX master Excel sheet that was floating around on Twitter. I think it was $1, or you make a donation and they'll download it to your account and you can open it up. And it is, I'm telling you, man, tons.
Oh my goodness gracious.
That's what I thought when I opened that thing. Tons of data. Tons. So I'm looking at this, I'm going, how am I going to sort this? What's important? What's not important? What matters? What doesn't matter? I mean, it all matters, but what do I want to apply to me and the way I want to draft? So what I decided to do is base the whole thing. Now, they had years. You had everybody's 2019, 18, 17, 16, 15, all the way back stats. That shit's not important to me. It is, but it's not, because those are old seasons. They've gone by. Every season is different. The parity in the NFL is insane. Yeah, it's just maybe some. I didn't throw it out completely. I can't say that, but I did look at and quarterbacks especially and say, okay, who's been consistent over the past 5 seasons, the past 3 seasons, and I kind of kept that in the back of my mind. But what I did next is I sorted by the final Scott Fishbowl ranks. So like you look at your cheat sheets that are out there in the fantasy universe, right? They've got your top 200 PPR ranks, 1, 2, 3, all the way to like 200. And that's everybody overall. So I decided take that first and sort it by the Fishbowl ranks. Then after that, I want to go back and I'm going to highlight the relevant scoring setting columns that I preferred, that are important to me. The first down catches, the first down rushing, the running backs that were breaking first downs, for quarterbacks, the pick sixes, the completion percentage, very important. The top scorers, right? So I've already got it sorted by the rank, so I know who's top to bottom. But in those, I want to be able to browse a tier and look at that tier and go, this guy's a number 2, but actually with those scoring settings, he could end up as a 3 or a 4 maybe. So I wanted to look at it like that. So I highlighted those columns that were unique to me and my needs, and they were, like a completion percentage, I'm looking at them now, touchdowns, interceptions, and sacks, because those sacks are negative scored. For running backs, it was first downs, averages. Receiving guys, I was looking at targets. I highlighted targets, receptions, and first downs, and then the ranks overall. So jumping back to that, once that was done, I completed the tiers. So I set out my own custom tiers, and like our prior episode, I highlighted my guys that I want, my targets, my takes, guys that I'll take. Hey, I didn't get the guy I want. I'll take this guy next. He's the next best in that tier. And then I highlighted my value guys, the guy that I'll take him, but if I go back in a later round and he is still there, that's a value pick. I got to get him. So those are 3 categories. Keep it simple, right? 3 categories I highlighted in each tier. And I identified the late value for those guys. I looked at some upside players in those, some rookies, and then just some flyers, guys at the end of the draft that hopefully are there. Maybe I want them, stuff like that. So after that begins the mock draft prep. The mock draft prep was awesome. I spent like the entire weekend prior just running mocks. I did so many. So what I decided to do, there was a kick-ass website out there called the Fantasy or the Football Workshop app. And you could take, it was designed for the Scott Fish Bowl. Everybody was running mock drafts on there, ADP, all that good stuff. And what was cool about it is it had a fresh selector. You could move this needle, which was called the freshness, to any range, and it would bring you up 8 days worth of mock drafts. It could bring you up 10 days. It could bring you up 1 day. All the drafts that were performed in whatever amount of time that you select is what you'll be doing a mock draft in. So I looked at that, and instead of just running that bar for the whole range, I really kept it current to like 3 to 5 days. Give me the most 3 to 5 current days, which is getting down to crunch time for the draft. So you know people are in there doing the same thing I'm doing. And then I threw out the ADP, right? At first I was like, you got to consider this ADP. But then after the more I looked at it and broke it down, why the hell would I want this ADP? People are experimenting in this mock just like I'm doing. So it's jacking it all up, right? Will it give me a baseline? Yes. I'm not going to live and die by it. But I can't run ADP numbers into my big board and expect guys to be there. I can put them in a neighborhood of ADP, and that's what I decided to do. Whatever guys kind of came out that I would look back and say, okay, that makes sense. That guy, he'd still be there. And then you'd see other players that go, there's no way anybody would let that guy fall that far or pick that guy that early. So I kind of threw the ADP out. I kept it as a neighborhood, like I said, and that worked out fine. But I just needed a baseline, and I ran 3 strategies out of the 3 spot in the draft. I was the 1-0-3, and then it would jump to the 2-10. So I had a little closeness in picks, not a back-to-back, but a little short wait before my next pick. So that changes up your draft strategy too. And I've said it in the first episode of the series, I've never had a draft spot that high. I'm always in the middle or at the very end, because a lot of the leagues I'm finishing mid or with a decent record where I'm not going to get, I've won a couple championships, obviously, but then you're kicked to the bottom for worst to first or first to worst, whatever the draft league wants to do. So with that 3 spot, I wanted to say, do I want to go quarterback, running back, tight end? Because it's quarterback premium, it's super flex. I can't mess this quarterback position up. Or do I go running back because of the position group, then quarterback, then tight end? Or do I go tight end, quarterback, running back, tight end premium, then I can scoop up quarterback? Those were the 3 I decided on. Those 3 were going to be the ones I was going to try and experiment. I ran, probably 3 to 5 mocks per strategy, per the 1, 2, and 3. And then what I did is I hand wrote each roster. I analyzed it. I ignored the Twitter groups and the hype. I was in a couple Twitter groups and just floating around, seeing the buzz out there. I had to stay away from it. The more you look at that stuff, you just throw yourself off because you're absorbing things and reading things that are absolutely ridiculous and other things that are really good. It's hard to pick out a lot of them because what's important to me may not be important to the next person. So I decided to ignore the noise, fade it. I'm not even going to entertain it. I stayed out of the groups. Didn't really want to see too much of what was going on in there. I would jump in occasionally and just see where people's heads were at for the moment. And I'm telling you, each day it was a different one. So the pre-draft prep, what I decided to do, I had this grand scheme that I was going to scout my opponents, just like an NFL team, right? So I printed out everybody in the division, all of their Scott Fishbowl 9 teams, and then I just looked at each one for like roster builds, trends. I don't know. I don't really know what I was looking at. I know they're not going to draft the same as they did last year because it's a different league. It's different scoring settings and whatnot. But I wanted to get a feel for each person's roster and just kind of see where their head's at, even late. I like look at the late picks because those are where guys are going to want to go. The prior season, they probably picked these guys late and said, I'll take a chance, whether they did good or bad. Those would be the guys that get bumped into the middle of their draft and get a little more priority. And then the guys that are high, those are probably the guys they target and they like. hard to say, but it honestly didn't do much. It didn't likely change anything really, but it just gave me an idea where people valued players. And that was really the only goal I wanted to do, and just see where people's heads were at for their own teams from last season. So I finalized my rankings. I set the big board one last time the night before draft day, and it looked glorious. I wish I could have printed it out on like a gigantic sheet, or just had a big washboard on the wall. I could handwrite them all in. That would be kick ass.
Awesome.
It would have been awesome. So then I got to have, like I've said in every episode too, you got to have a backup plan. What's the backup plan if this draft goes to shit? So what I said and decided was follow the big board no matter what. I'm going to follow that damn thing to the bottom. But I'm going to rely on prior picks, prior mock drafts that I did with the players that I picked, and just outline those players and hopefully, kind of reference them, that they should generally be available in that neighborhood of whatever draft spot it was. That's my backup plan. Keep it simple. There's no crazy nothing. Just keep it simple. So with that, let's get to the draft day execution. The execution. The results. So I'm going to open up the big board here. I'm going to run through some players. We're going to talk about them. I'm going to go pick from pick. I don't know if I should start with the picks or what I landed first. I guess I should go through the roster quick and then give you a take on which player, what I was thinking on these players. Let me pull that up. This is good podcasting stuff here. Get that opened up. So I've got the back half of the draft on my notes on my phone, and I've got the front 11 handwritten on paper. So let's jump into the front half paper picks. At pick 103, I'm going Lamar Jackson. Are you kidding me? That's my top target. He was my must-have, target-own, highest-ranking player. If he was gone, I probably would have taken Mahomes or Kelsey or changed it up. I was pretty much confident. I was confident that he was going to be there because you got Barkley, McCaffrey 1 and 2, right? It never fails. So I was pretty confident he would be there. I wasn't too sure that somebody else wouldn't grab him first ahead of me. But like I said, looking at everybody's drafts from the season prior, they're going to go running back most likely or tight end in this one. So Jackson was there. I took him. Now scoot down to the 210. I ought to pull up my draft flow here too. I should have had this ready. I apologize. All right. So let me follow along here. I've got Jackson off the board. Then Mahomes goes. Can't talk tonight. Jeez, easy for me to say. Then all your backs, your typical chalk picks, right? So my goal, like I said at the top, was quarterback, running back, tight end. I was going 1, 2, and 3. I want a top-ranked guy in each position group of those 3 immediately because they're important. So I was pretty much set to settle on Chris Carson or Ingram. I figured, Jones will go. He's likely to be gone. Aaron Jones is still there.
Good God!
That's going back to the value on my board. I had to take him. I didn't really want him. I conceded pretty much that he'd be gone. And I try not to take home team guys too much or stack guys on my home teams or on one team for that matter, just because. So Jones, I had no intention of taking, but I knew if I passed him up, he would have been gone, long gone. So I take Jones at 210, and my next target is Zach Ertz. I mocked him in every draft. Zach Ertz fell to me at the 303. So I got Zach Ertz locked and loaded. He's gonna go. And what do I know? Eric Belair takes him 2 spots before my 310 or 303 pick. So Ertz is off the board. I'm going tight end. I'm sticking to my board. Who's the next top-ranked tight end? Mark Andrews. So, of course, like I said, I'm not a fan of the stack. I don't like it. But I'm taking the value what's there. Your big dogs were gone. So Kittle's gone, obviously, and whatnot. Kelsey gone. So Andrews is the pick. Then I queue up. Next is a running back. I'm going to go back. I'm going to stick to building my top-ranked guys. Check out my board. So at the 4-10, I'm taking Chris Carson. And honestly, I'm not too concerned with his injury stuff. I know Carlos Hyde and Penny are there. Penny's hurt. I don't know if he can do anything for this team. He does mediocre stuff. He flashes and then he disappears. He's not consistent. So Penny doesn't scare me. So I took Carson. When you look at Carson, let me jump over to the board here. Oh, boy, where are we here? Carson, 75 first downs, 75 rushing first downs. That is a primo scoring setting bonus, and I want that all day long, top ranked. So I take Carson off the books. The running back is going to deplete depth fast, right? So without Jones there, some other guys are gone. It's going to go quick. So I'm scooping Carson here. I can swing back is my head. I can swing back for some other good options. So I'm not worried about it. So I jump over to the 503 and I land Kirk Cousins, who is fantasy gold for this scoring format. You don't think he would be, but he is. 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Interceptions are negative points. That's minimal. 28 sacks, that's fine. Lamar took 23 and get it done, right? He had 8 rushing first downs. He's not going to set the world ablaze with his feet. But for Superflex, Scott Fishbowl, give me 2 quarterbacks, Cousins and Jacksons. That's the epitome of Ebony Ivory, opposite, whatever you want to call it, right? So that's a good contrast, a good balance there. I like that. At the 6'10", I'm going Jarvis Landry. I picked him up. Again, a guy with 138 targets, over 1,000 yards, 55 first downs, 6 touchdowns. I think he can scoop some more. I know there's a lot of mouths to feed in Cleveland. Doesn't scare me. But I wanted to go Mark Ingram. I was going to go Mark Ingram there and get a good stack on running backs. But when I looked at it, I couldn't pull the trigger on Ingram because my gut and my board was saying he's still going to be there later. And you got to scoop a receiver. Receivers were starting to go. At that point, Juju gone, Kenny Galladay gone, A-Rob, Odell, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Ridley, Thielen, right? So I'm like, this wide receiver group, I need a stud receiver that's going to perform, that plays. His injury too, off-season injury, hip stuff, whatever he's got going on, that doesn't scare me either. I'm not worried about it. So Landry was my pick. And then what do you know, at the 703, Mark Ingram is available. Trust the board. Trust the board. So I grab Ingram. Again, a guy that had 53 rushing first downs. 53. And then he had 29 targets, 26 receptions. He's catching what's thrown to him. 16 first downs via the pass and 5 receiving touchdowns. So great value there. I figured if I didn't take him at the 7, he'd be long gone, as he was in my mock drafts. So what do I want to do with the 8-10? The 8-10 spot is interesting because right there, we had another run on some tight ends. We had Evan Ingram go off the board. We had Darren Waller go off the board. So I'm looking at that tight end group. I saw those 2 go. We're already scooting down there. I said this group is going to be depleted in no time. And while I've got Andrews, I want to stack him with somebody good and with somebody with some upside. I hate that tight end position group as a whole. It absolutely sucks. But I really like Jack Doyle. I've been high on him all off season. I really like him. Last season, 72 targets, 43 receptions, 4 TDs, 29 first down catches. And with Ebron out of the picture, Doyle can take a lot of the targets he was getting prior with Andrew Luck. Now you throw in Phillip Rivers, who's going to need a safety valve, check down, Hunter Henry type outlet, chain mover. He's got a great offensive line to throw behind. He should not be under heat and taking a shit ton of sacks like he was. I love Doyle. I love him. But the Colts signed Trey Burton. Is Burton ever healthy? No, he's not. So Doyle's my guy. I love this guy. I think he's really going to return a ton of value at that pick. I think I was the first person to take him that early in Scott Fishbowl. For a while on that opening screen, it said the earliest he was taken at the 8 was me. I don't think anybody went. But I'm just looking at my board, and trusting my board, he'd have been gone in 1 or 2 more picks maybe. I could push it. I know he fell in a lot of drafts way late. Some people scooped him up at the 16, 17. I didn't want to risk it. I really wanted him, and you got to get the guys you want. Go with your gut. If it's a guy you want, don't be scared. Be aggressive. Get him. So Doyle was my pick there. I really liked him. Like I said, it's a scoop and score for me. Higbee got selected as well. And what was my other note in here? Yeah, he was gone typically around the 10 spot. I think 9 or 10 he was going in mocks, but that was a mock. So then I kicked back with the 903 Michael Gallup, and he was a guy that I liked as well. I love Mike McCarthy. I like Mike McCarthy coming over to Dallas and bringing his offensive pass attack there. Gallup last season, 113 targets, 66 receptions, 1,000 yards, 50 first down catches. Give it to me. 6 TDs. He could go for some more TDs. I really think he's going to do more under Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy loves his number 2 receivers. Look at the Packers. You had James Jones. Then they go get Greg Jennings, and Jennings is the guy. Then they get Jordy Nelson. He works his way up from a slot guy. Then he's the guy. So McCarthy targets. He lets his 1s and 2s open up other stuff for, receivers. I like what Gallup can do. I like his potential this season. Heavily targeted. The volume's there. He's part of the offense. I took him over. Tyler Boyd was there, and I really wanted Boyd too. But I couldn't decide with Boyd and a rookie quarterback, an offense I'm not sure how it's going to play out. The line is a little suspect. You've got a more balanced attack, and this is going back to my NFL train of thought here. You've got a better NFL scenario with the Cowboys than you do the Bengals. They're a more balanced team. They've got Zeke. They've got Dak. You got weapons at every skill position. You've got a coach who's aggressive. You got a coach who passes the ball, who really doesn't believe in the run unless he proves me wrong this season. So Gallup was a score for me. Then I'd go to the 10-10, and I'd pick up another tight end because Dallas Goedert was still there. I know some people, he's hit or miss. Some people love him or hate him on Twitter, but I am high on Goedert. Plays all the games. He's a number 1 if Zach Ertz goes down. 87 targets last season, 58 receptions, 33 first downs, and 5 TDs. So why the hell not? I've got an instant tight end 1 should anything happen to Ertz, and I've got a tight end who is consistently featured in the Philly offense. So give me Goedert. And then I topped out my front 11 with Jameson Crowder, and I love Crowder. Without Robbie Anderson there anymore, Crowder has got the trust of Sam Darnold. He's a heavy piece of the game plan, featured 122 targets last season, 78 receptions, 41 first downs, 6 touchdowns. You got to love what he can do for you there. At the 11, I was pretty happy. I look at my draft. Do I have balance? Yes, I do. It looks good. I've got targeted guys. But, the front half of the draft always can go a lot of different ways. Most of the people are going to take their chalk picks, and you're going to get who you get. Nothing crazy. The second half is when the stuff gets crazy. That's when stuff's hitting the fan. So let's jump into the second half here and take a look at these picks. So with the 12-10, I had to jump and grab Cole Beasley. Cole Beasley, 106 targets, 67 receptions, 6 touchdowns, 37 via first down. He's going to be a chain mover in the Buffalo offense. I know they took Diggs. Doesn't scare me. He's featured in the offense. He was the best player available on the big board in the receiver group. I figure the addition of Diggs, who's that going to hurt more, John Brown or Beasley? It's going to hurt Brown because Brown is more boom or bust. Beasley's your consistent guy, drag routes over, move the chains. You know what I mean? Like he's your outlet, your dump off, your hot read, stuff like that. So I like Beasley. Diggs doesn't scare me off of him. Maybe he regresses a little. That's fine. Just give me those first downs. Give me the receptions. He's got plenty of targets. I'm good with it. At the 13, so let me go back. The 12 spot, when I take Beasley, I've got 2 quarterbacks. I really want another. I got a guy in mind that I've been looking at in the offseason here. He gets no love. People laugh at him. And I said, you know what? I like you. I think you can do something. And his name is Tyrod Taylor.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Listen, this guy is a poor man's Lamar Jackson. I know there's nothing to go off. This is a complete dart throw. This is a gut pick. He's been screaming to me because that Chargers line is bad. And what could Phillip Rivers not do in that offense behind that line? He couldn't scramble and pick up a first down for his life, right? Tyrod Taylor can. So give it to me. Eckler's going to be your guy. You got to imagine he's going to have a ton of dump offs to Eckler, completions. He's going to get, I don't know, his own share of rushing yards just by default. And he's a vet. He's got experience. So if the pocket breaks down, I like his upside to scramble and make something happen. Is he an awesome, quarterback? No, he's not. He's not nearly the superstar or anything like that. But is he going to fill a need on the Scott Fishbowl squad here? For me, I think so. I knew a lot of people would pass him up. But when that quarterback class started getting depleted on my mock drafts, Taylor was typically the first one off the board in that neighborhood. So after I took Beasley, I was hoping Taylor would be there. I didn't want to push it too much further because I figured he'd be gone. Guys were, grabbing quarterbacks at that point. Let me see who's coming off the board there. You had Tua came off. He was gone. You had Haskins. Dwayne Haskins was gone. Come on, I know there's one more. Phillip Rivers was gone. So, it's coming, right? After these guys, if you look at the Scott Fishbowl settings, a lot of those quarterbacks you don't want. They throw too many interceptions. They take too many sacks, whatever the case. So I thought Taylor, he could turn out to be a gem, could be a bust. I'm good with it either way. At the 14-10, I jump in and take Nyheim Hines. I got to go to my cell phone notes here on the pad. I took him. He was pretty much the best running back available as far as scoring goes. You look at his handcuff with Marlon Mack. I know Taylor's there as a rookie, but his involvement in the offense over the others, I'm going to take him. I love him. It's slim pickings at running back at that point. I was planning to take Latavius Murray because he was starting to drop, but he got selected a few rounds prior, so I missed out on him. Hines was the next best, especially tailored to those scoring settings, so I grabbed him. After that, the 15:03, I take Larry Fitzgerald, old trusted Larry, underrated receiver for the Cardinals, 109 targets, 75 receptions, 40 first downs. I looked at that 40. That's a nice stat. With the addition of Hopkins, does he lose some target? Sure, maybe. But last season, it was him and Kirk. You take Hopkins, you bump Kirk out. The crafty vet, he does not go away. So I like Fitzgerald there. I like him to pick me up first downs, be a chain mover. He can fill me in on a bye week, and that's a solid play, either in the flex, what have you. If anything should happen to Hopkins, you bump him up, to pretty much what was going on last season in Arizona. I love Larry Fitzgerald there. I wanted to go Justin Jefferson, but he got picked 2 before me. I had Justin Jefferson queued up. He got selected 2 picks before me. So the wide receiver run was on at that point to a degree. The group was thin just as far as consistency goes. Consistency was very important to me in this draft. And I'm taking Fitz as a chain mover with defenses focusing on Hopkins, combined with good health. Larry stays healthy, man. He's a safe pick, good target. So that was my pick there. My next 16-10 was a guy that I had targeted in all my mocks. I wanted him bad. Will Disley, Seahawks. Listen, I was planning on getting Henry Ruggs. A lot of the mocks, Disley would fall another couple rounds, and I figured I'd scoop him then. So I was hell-bent on getting Henry Ruggs because I want rookies. I want to take some chances on some rookies in this group. But in the DM group that I'm in for the skateboard division, a lot of people started talking tight end. 2 people picked some up. The next team that was drafted behind me only had 1 tight end, and that was Gronk. So I knew, looking at that tight end group of who was left, Disley was probably going to be taken next. So he was ranked high in the Scott Fish Bowl settings and ranks. So, in the tight end, he was 36th. I know you can laugh and say 36, but for that tight end group, that's not too bad. So I figured somebody would take him. But listen, Disley can return healthy. Greg Olsen he's going to go down at any time, right? Disley is your instant tight end 1 and a go-to for Russ Wilson. So, Ruggs, I'm going to hope, right, at that point, I'm going to hope he's still there in 4 spots. If people are following the Fantasy Sharks draft board, that's a big difference than the board I created. The Fantasy Sharks draft board, real quick, is a link through MFL that takes you and shows you a nice clean view of who's been selected, who's available. That is not ranked and sorted the way the Scott Fishbowl rank is, or my own custom big board. So if you go by the board, the Fantasy Sharks board, Ruggs should still be there, and I think a lot of people were drafting off of that board. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of people were. So I figured, hey, I'll take him later. So the next pick at the 1703, D.D. Westbrook, still there. 2 picks later, after I take Disley, of course, Ruggs is gone. So the Jags add Laviska Shenault in the NFL draft, but I think his role is more of a threat to Chris Conley, not Westbrook. Westbrook had a killer season a while back, if you remember. I'm unsure why everybody's forgotten about the Jags slot receiver who finished as the wide receiver 45 last season. He got 101 targets in 15 games. He's got solid production, 31 first downs. Look at who's calling the plays there. Jay Gruden is the new offensive coordinator. Going back to the real life NFL scenario, if you recall, we watched Jameson Crowder flourish under Gruden. This team is going to be throwing the ball quite a bit in Jacksonville. I really think D.D. Westbrook can have a strong season this season. So I took him. Now here's where shit gets interesting, right? Here's some record scratches. At the 18-10, I'm looking at that board. I'm looking at my quarterbacks. I want more upside. I want some good stuff. I want to throw a dart maybe. I just want to do something different. I take quarterback Jalen Hurts. Yeah, I had to, right? Jalen Hurts, they love this guy. No, I haven't seen a team gush over a draft pick like I have with the Eagles. So he's my 4th quarterback. I want to stack some quarterbacks here. I'm grabbing him before somebody other than myself realizes, hey, Carson Wentz never finishes a full season as a quarterback. So I really think Doug Peterson has got some big things planned for this guy, whether it's trick plays, featured packages, something. He's going to get this guy on the field one way or the other. Peterson's a former quarterback. Everybody wants a piece of that Lamar Jackson, right? Everybody wants a Lamar Jackson on their team to do the things he does. Not everybody can do those things, but everybody wants a guy like that. Jalen Hurts can fit, like a poor man's, like I said, Tyrod Taylor type. He's not going to be Lamar Jackson, but can he do some crazy, eye-popping things or make some plays, some design things that suit his strengths? I think so. Why not? And like I said, if Wentz goes down, you've got your quarterback that's starting. So I've got 2 starters, late value. That was trusting the board. He was a target, and I wanted him, so I got him. At the 1903, I had to go back and get a running back because I'm going, man, I don't have much for backs. The backs are just, that position group got worked in this draft. So the way I was positioned in the draft, getting a lot of good running backs, I guess it was just the in-between from the 10 to return back to the 3. Most of them got snatched up. The good ones, the targeted ones, the scoring unique ones that I like. So I had to get something on the board. I took Gus Edwards. He was, pretty much handcuff time for me. I got to take a handcuff there. I know Dobbins is in the mix, but Edwards really isn't that bad. He performed adequately, with Ingram, the 1-2 punch. And if anything should happen to Ingram, Edwards gets a bump, Dobbins gets a bump, so I'll take him there. At the 2010, I took KJ Hamler, wide receiver for the Broncos, rookie. I love what this guy can do. He's been a target as well. I like him in the three receiver sets in Denver, you got to picture him out of the slot. And I think he's shifty. He's going to have to learn how to beat man coverage, but definitely worth a flyer late in the draft with 2 picks to go. I mean, I'm looking at the wide receivers. The best ones that I wanted and I had highlighted were Tyrell Williams, Russell Gage, Randall Cobb. So they were already taken. I figured take a shot with Hamler. He could be on the field. That Denver offense looks pretty nice this season. If Drew Lock can take it to the next level, they'll be potent. And then I jump back to the 2103. I wait a while and come back and take Cameron Brate. It's tight end premium. It's Gronk insurance. You know Brady is going to utilize the tight end game in Tampa. He has to, right? He's got to be telling Arians, look, this is how he did it in New England. The tight end works. Gronk, let me hit Gronk all day. I don't know if Gronk's going to play all season. I don't know if he's going to be Gronk of old. Nobody knows. O.J. Howard was gone, obviously, but if anything should happen to Gronk, there's your 1-2 punch at tight end with Brate and Howard. And Brate, say what you want. He's still got some targets and catches, some first downs in that offense, but that was with Jameis Winston. Throw in Tom Brady, much better quarterback, better upgrade. He can't sling it like Winston can, but he's smarter on the field. He's more experienced. He can move the chains. He knows his dump offs. He knows what to do, the adjustments. So I picked him there. And then with the last pick in the draft, the 2210 goes, this is a guy I really wasn't even planning on taking. I kind of saw him around in the mocks, but I didn't really think I'd take him. DJ Dallas, running back for Seattle. I'm looking at Dallas and I say, obviously, he fits that Seattle scheme really well. If you look at what he did in college to what Seattle runs, Pete Carroll, I think he fits that scheme pretty well, and he could see some fantasy opportunity right away if Penny and Carson aren't ready to roll. Who else are they going to? Hyde in Dallas it could be. You never know. It could play out a lot of different ways. I think it's unlikely that he sees much playing time if all the backs are healthy in Seattle, but typically they're not. So I think he's going to be relevant in the case of injury. You never know. It's running back depth, and I want some of that. That's the goal. So I like that pick there to finish it out. And I thought overall that was a solid draft. I had a blast. I love those picks. They were hot and heavy for a while. The final stats. Let's look at some final stats real quick here. Did I meet the goals? Okay, so here's some stats. I had 3 players that were ranked outside the Scott Fish Bowl top 50. Only 3 that were ranked outside the top 50. Those 3 were rookies. So I'll take that. I landed 3 players inside the top 5. I landed 7 players that were inside the top 10, and these are the Scott Fish Bowl ranks for everything. I took 11 players inside the top 25, and the complete 22-man roster inside the top 50. So out of that whole skew, you got 566 total players, but your typical top 200 counting, right? That's how I'm trying to look at it. Give me a top 200. If I told you I'll give you a top 200, and then your whole team's got to be condensed under the top 50, I think that's a success. I'm happy with it. My balanced roster goal, I wanted a balanced roster. So how did I nail it? I had 4 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 7 receivers, and 5 tight ends. I think the goal was met. I know I'd go a little heavy on maybe one position or whatever. It won't be even. But I really just wanted a decent amount of positions on that final roster to open up the first quarter of the season, because the waivers during the season will change things, but out of the gate over the first few weeks, that's when shit is random. You don't know how it plays out, what happens. The first quarter of the season is always chaos, and that's just what I want, is the balance. You never know who's going to be the breakout guy. You never know what position will be. You don't want to be going, damn, I need a receiver and I don't ever. Nobody's on the waiver wire. I don't like that feeling, so I wanted a pretty balanced roster to avoid it. And then targeted players, and how many targeted players did I get? The highlighted guys on my board that were targets: Jackson, Ingram, Doyle, Taylor, Disley, and Hurts. I got those. And then I also was very fortunate to land some Bob Lung approved consistency guys. Bob Lung is the creator of the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. It is a Bible. It is a staple of mine every fantasy season. I must have it. I get it every year. It's a solid guide. It's got a good stat lines in it for everybody. It's got consistency ratings. Bob does a damn good job with it. So how many guys do I have that Bob would approve of? Carson, Landry, Ingram, Doyle, Gallup, Geitert, Beasley, Hines, and Westbrook were all consistency, undervalued plays per the consistency guide. So Bob, thank you for a kick-ass guide that really helps me out on draft day. And then a tale of two halves, the front 11 versus the back 11. The front half of the draft, no worries. I pretty much just let the board fall to me. I took the best players available. Really no big wrenches thrown into the game plan. So that went according to how I was looking at it. Nothing really made me go to backup plans or panic. And then the back half 11, it was really just snipes. You know, at the 10-10, I was looking at getting Cohen. I took Geitert, best player. At the 14, I really wanted Jefferson, like I said earlier. I took Hines. At 15, I was, aiming up Hunter Renfrow. I took Larry Fitzgerald. 17, I wanted Henry Ruggs. I took Dede. So not the end of the world. Those were good targets. They weren't there. They got sniped from me. So I'll take the best player next on the board, and that's what I did. So all in all, solid draft. I walked away with a team that I definitely do not hate. I really like it. I never had to panic in this draft. I made some, adjustments on the fly. Like I said, be prepared for anything, make adjustments, trust your board, do all that stuff. It sounds stupid. We're nerding out on fantasy stuff, but you do it. Do the extra and it'll pay off. Does the draft win you the league? Never. We all know that. Never. But damn, it makes me feel a lot better for that first quarter of the season because that first quarter is rough. You never know what can happen. So that'll wrap up the show today. Had to go over a little bit to get all that in. I apologize. We'll keep it under a total hour. We're at the 51-minute mark. So, as always, thank you for listening to my random thoughts, and following me on Twitter. I really appreciate all of you guys. It means a lot. The QuickCast is always off the cuff, off the top of my head. No prep, no rehearsal crap. I just let it rip on a pod and hit record. I don't edit. Just let it go, man. So, if you like it, share the content on Twitter. Bookmark the website, fantasywirehq.com. I've got the rankings up for July. I'll do another set in August. And then once the season starts, you can find all the podcasts there. You can find the Fantasy Pros expert rankings. I have them on there currently. I'll do starts and sits for the season as well. All kinds of good stuff. Bookmark it. I love doing it. It's a labor of love. And good luck to all of you in your upcoming drafts. If you need anything, hit me up, as always, on Twitter, man. I love interacting with you all. It's the best. And with that, until then.
Yeah, all right, this press conference is over.
Go away.
No, it's over, Phil.
Well, please,
it's over.